What's going on, guys? Cam here from Edmund's Woodshop. Today we are bringing you another video on the OMTech Polar. This time we are focusing on cleaning. Today's video is going to serve as a baseline on how I clean my laser, but the schedule should depend on how often you use your laser. So if you're somebody that uses your laser every single day, all day, then you might find yourself having to clean your laser a lot more. But how we do it, that's what we're going to show you, and let's get started. Here are some good items to have when you go to clean your laser. You have a couple pair of rubber gloves. These are used when handling lenses so you don't get fingerprints on the lens or mirrors, but also when applying a thin coat of grease to your rails. And then I personally use a lens cleaning cloth when cleaning the mirror and lenses, but you're gonna need some Q-tips to clean and reach inside the laser nozzle. Now you do have some cotton swabs that come in your toolkit, but as you can see, you have a limited supply. So if you run out of these, using Q-tips is just fine. Now, these three items I got from Harbor Freight. So the blue shop towel I'll use to wipe down the rails and clean off the old grease. You have the white lithium grease that is used to replace the grease onto the rails. And then microfiber cloths, that's for cleaning any dust or debris that accumulate on the inside of the walls or outside of the machine. And then you have isopropyl alcohol, that is for cleaning your lenses. The preferred is 99%, but 91 is perfectly acceptable.
Now, I definitely recommend picking a cordless vacuum, and more specifically with this brush attachment. It has horsehair bristles, which will be stiff enough to break up the dust on the surface of your laser, but they'll also be soft enough to where it won't hurt any of the electronics that you go over. So to gain access to both sides of the lens, we actually have to remove the entire laser nozzle assembly. And we start this by slightly pulling on the air line so it disconnects from the little plastic elbow connector here. And then you have to actually remove the elbow by turning it counterclockwise. So it's made out of plastic, so just be careful as you're spinning it, and then eventually it will fall out. Next, we'll remove the metal collar underneath the lens plate here. And if you turn it clockwise, it'll actually loosen it until it falls off. At this point, we want to lower the Z-axis down, and we could do this by manually adjusting the screw counterclockwise, and you'll notice that the laser nozzle will go down. And what this does is just provides enough clearance so we can actually pull out the laser nozzle itself. Once we pull this out, unscrew the tip of the laser nozzle, and this will give us access to the underside of the lens for cleaning since it's glued in, and the top side. Cleaning the top of the lens is actually pretty straightforward. I'm going to grab the lens cleaning cloth and I will get it damp with the isopropyl alcohol, and I will clean the lens, making sure there's no streaks or any smudges left on there. To clean the underside of the lens, we'll just grab a cleaning swab and we'll get it a little wet with the isopropyl alcohol, not soaking wet, and we'll just start cleaning the inside of the lens as well as the walls to clean any of that debris and any of the smudges. It might take one or two cleaning swabs, but once you're done, you'll see a nice clean lens on both sides. And then right here, you can see my face. That's just an indication that the round side of the lens is glued in correctly. Should be round side facing up. There is a mirror just above the laser nozzle assembly here that you're going to want to clean with your lens cleaning cloth and isopropyl alcohol, or with a cleaning swab. And then on the other side, there's a lens here that you're going to want to clean as well. Now, if you have the MOZZEFFECT red dot upgrade, you're going to want to clean both sides of that lens. And then once this is all clean, we'll go ahead and get into reassembly. So the only thing that needs to be assembled back in order is going to be the lens and then the metal ring here. and then you may need to raise the Z-axis back up to give yourself clearance. And this is kind of a tedious process, but once you get that tightened up, then you can start assembling everything else. You can see it's pretty loose still, so make sure you get it nice and snug. This is kind of a pain in the neck, but putting the plastic connector, the air connector back in, once you get it, it should go, but don't force it. Okay, remember it's made out of plastic and you're screwing it into a metal object, so you don't want to break it or deform it in any sort of way. As you get it screwed in, make sure you orient the airline connector in a way that the airline tubing can slide right back over it. And we're just going to grab the tip of the laser nozzle and simply just screw that back in. We should be all set.
So before we move on, I want to show you a laser nozzle assembly that I will be moving to. Now this is a design that was created by a member of our OMTech Polar users group on Facebook. His name is Andy Fiore. Now he came up with this design. It's got 3 pieces. It's got the upper collar here. It's got the upper assembly, laser nozzle assembly, and then the lower metal laser nozzle assembly. Now, this is important for a few reasons, and this is why I'm moving to this design. Well, you have your air inlet, right, where your air comes in. It's pointed directly out the nozzle. This is important for keeping your debris not only clean, but keeping that dirty air off the underside of your lens, and it keeps all the debris blowing out the nozzle, okay? Second, you have this depression at the top. This is important because now you can fit a loose 15mm lens on the top, and then you use the collar to hold it in place. Now, why would this matter to you? Well, you saw how tedious it was to remove this whole stock laser nozzle assembly. This allows you to install one time, take the collar off. You'll have to use something to poke the lens out, but once you get the lens out, you can simply clean the lens and then put it back in and then put your collar on. That saves you, heck, I don't know, 2 minutes, 3 minutes of messing with this stock laser nozzle. So impressive design. I recommend checking him out, and I'll put the link to his Etsy inside the description box. So here's what it looks like installing it. Now, I did forget to mention that Andy has this little holder that comes with it. The holder simply gets plugged in to the top, and now you have a way of holding the nozzle as you put it in here, right? So there it is in place. You take the stock collar. This is the lower collar from the stock laser nozzle. Goes underneath, and you simply twist this until it tightens up. Okay, just like that. And then you can take the holder out. You take your metal nozzle. Might have to raise the Z-axis up a little bit. Give you some space. Take the metal laser nozzle, twist that on there. Okay, get it oriented to where the air hose can go through the hole, and then you can plug that right on. Now this diameter of the metal nozzle is just a little bit bigger, and that's just to ensure that it stays snug. But as you can see, it goes on relatively easy. Now check this out, okay? Just gonna lower this here so you can see it some more. Now I have that depression there, right? I can take my loose lens, round side up to where you can see your head, and you just drop it right in there, okay? You take the upper collar, and then all this does is it tightens on top to hold it in place. The advantage is that I can quickly remove this collar, gain access to the lens to where I can clean it and put it back. So I'm wearing blue gloves just because I don't want to handle the lens with just my fingers. So we're just going to remove this collar here, put that down, and I'm going to grab something soft like the end of my cleaning swab here just to lift up the edge. It's enough to where I can grab it. Okay. And then I have my lens cleaning cloth that's been dipped in isopropyl alcohol. Just give that a clean there, both sides. And then when I go to install it, I want to make sure that it's round side up to where I can see my face. That's how you know it's round side up. So pop that right back in there. Put the collar back on. And there you have it.
To take off the cover, we're going to remove the front screw and the rear screw. And then we're going to start disconnecting the cables. We'll first remove the LED light bar cable right here, and a simple pull should disconnect it. And then just push it through the hole and then pull the cable down. This is the door sensor cable, so just unplug that and then just push it out of the way. These cables go to your push button, just unplug those and then pull them down. To remove the cover, I actually take my hand and I push against the inside wall while simultaneously pulling up, and it pops right off. Now it is made out of glass, so make sure you put it off to the side and place it somewhere safe. I actually ended up dropping my left side cover and shattering the glass. But we're gonna go ahead and do the same thing, remove the screws. We're gonna disconnect the light bar plug and disconnect the door sensor and pop that cover off. We're going to start vacuuming the laser, starting with the tray and the honeycomb bed. And that's where the cordless vacuum really comes in handy, because then we could just set it anywhere and start vacuuming the loose debris, the dust. And after repetitive use, the tray gets kind of grimy, so some people choose to clean it with a degreaser, but that'll be up to you. We want to start wiping down the machine, so we need to remove the dust cover for the tube and here for the electronics. And you'll need your set of Allen wrenches, unless you have your own personal Allen wrench. And then you remove those two screws and then just remove the cover. Then remove the screw on the left, front, and back, and on the right, front, and back. Now you may notice that I have a magnet there on the left side, but I don't have one on the right side, and that's because it messes with the electronics right there. So if you choose to do this, just keep that in mind. Now I do have magnets on the back side, both left and right, so you can choose to do that as well. But it's just a quick tip for quick maintenance to remove that dust cover. Now I did the same concept on this dust shield, replacing the screws with little magnets in these locations. And that just allows me to quickly remove the dust cover for vacuuming and or other maintenance. Now we can start vacuuming. I like to start with the brush attachment and just start going over the surfaces of the laser, getting down on that fan. And that's where this brush attachment really starts to shine, because the bristles are stiff enough to break up all that dust that likes to stick to all the sidewalls, to all the components, to all the electronics. And it really just helps break everything up and capture it in the vacuum. For the hard to reach narrow areas, the crevice tool comes in handy. My vacuum came with this attachment, but you can see how helpful it is, since the Polar has a lot of tight areas where the brush attachment can't reach. Now grab a microfiber cloth and just wipe down the surface of the glass tube. You're going to clean the dust shields in the back, just wipe those down, the underside of the glass lid, and then start cleaning the walls. The walls will actually get a buildup of dust and get nasty over time, so try your best to keep those clean and wipe those as often as you can. We're going to start the process for removing the old grease off the rails. We're going to use a blue shop towel here and just thoroughly wipe down the left x-axis here, getting the top, the sides, and then we'll use a Q-tip to clean up all the recess attachment points on the linear rail here and just re-wipe it down. So we're going to zoom right through this because cleaning the rails is the same on each side. Clean the sides, the top, get a Q-tip to clean out those recess attachment points, and then just wipe it down. This is the right rail. Clean the sides, clean the top. Get a Q-tip, clean out those recess attachment points, and then just wipe it back down. So the Z-axis needs to be wiped down, and then all the excess grease on the linear bearings behind the laser head needs to be wiped down as well. Now we can apply the new white lithium grease. The trick is to not use so much because a little bit just goes a long way. So add a little bit at a time as you see necessary, and then try to evenly spread it across the top and the sides. And then we'll follow the same suit on the other rails. So I didn't mention this before, but there are linear bearings underneath the gantry that ride along the Y-axis on the left and right side. Those will have excess grease that will need to be cleaned as well. Applying grease to the Z-axis in this area can be tricky just because it's a little tight. But what I opted to do was to put a dab of grease on a paper towel and then just start working it onto the screw in an up and down motion until it was coated with a thin layer of grease. Now, keep in mind there is a little rail and a linear bearing right behind the screw that you need to apply grease to as well. Now it's time for reassembly. You can see that the magnets on this dust cover is certainly an advantage, but check this out. Bam! Got myself a new cover and it's not broken. But now we're going to do everything here in reverse. We're going to put the light bar connection through the hole, and we're going to reconnect the light bar. Sorry about my shoulder here. But we're going to reconnect the door sensor as well. And then I'm going to install the laser tube dust cover here, again using magnets instead of screws as a speed advantage for maintenance. And then I'm just going to wipe it down, making sure it's clean. Here we're just going to repeat the process for installing the cover. Don't forget to install the 2 cables underneath your push button. These are pretty easy to do. And then you may need to move the gantry out of the way so you can work the light bar plug through the hole and back into its connection. And then don't forget about the door sensor plug as well. So while I wipe down the top of the laser, I do want to mention that I purposely left off the 2 screws that hold each of the covers, and that's because they're pretty secure in place, and I do plan on taking the covers off often when I do maintenance. All right, guys, so we went over some general maintenance on how to take care of your Polar. Now, keep in mind some of the things I said earlier is the consistency or how often you clean your laser will depend on how often you use it, right? So the lens should be cleaned every day, but greasing the rails and wiping everything down, that will depend on really the amount you use your laser. Now, there are things that I didn't touch on today. For example, I didn't touch on how to clean the honeycomb. And the honeycomb is pretty easy. Over time, it'll start to get gunked up and you'll use it. And you could just take a degreaser, take it outside, spray it with a degreaser, let it sit, and then spray it off either with a power washer or with a hose. And you can get most of that off and then just let it dry and put it in. So that's pretty easy. Next, I didn't talk about cleaning
the inline fan. So the inline fan, over time, it's gonna, it's gonna ventilate all that sticky, dirty debris. So you're gonna want to pull down the fan and then just wipe down the blades. Otherwise, it'll get kind of gunky over time. The last thing I didn't touch on is the internal chiller. So if you ever find yourself that you're low on coolant, you can actually just add distilled water. So this is a gallon of distilled water that I bought from Target for like $1.12. Really cheap. Distilled water. Has to be distilled water. Now the coolant inside your Polar, all that is RV antifreeze. All right, so if you're in a climate, maybe it's in your garage and maybe you're in an environment where it could freeze, then that's where the coolant's gonna be important, right? But if you're in somewhere where it's climate controlled, like where I am in my shop, distilled water, 100% fine, and you can just add it to it. So that's gonna be it for today. If you have any questions or want me to touch on something more, just ask in the comments below. And then as always, if you can, just subscribe, and we'll catch you guys later.